I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and if you're on Verizon, you've got a lot of options to choose from when it comes to Android phones. Whether you need 4G LTE connectivity, ice cream sandwich, a physical QWERTY keyboard, or a nice big battery, you've got some choices in that department. Well, I've got two of those in my hands, and you know what we do in PhoneDog land when we're trying to decide which phone's the best? We put them together in a dogfight, a head-to-head, a battle until the end. Here's a Motorola DROID RAZR MAXX, and this thing has a big 3300 milliamp hour battery along with a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core processor, a 4.3-inch display, and an 8-megapixel camera. Then you have the Motorola DROID 4 over here, freshly announced on Verizon, available now with a physical QWERTY keyboard, a 1.2 gigahertz processor, a little bit smaller 4-inch display, and Android 2.3. Which one's the must-have device? Do you need the keyboard? Do you need the battery? Which is the better feature to have? We'll find out in the dogfight, but first some love to Best Buy Mobile, because when you go into Best Buy Mobile, you'll walk out working. They'll help you set up your email, your web, your keyboard, your battery settings, and more. So when you walk out the door with either of these devices, you're good to go. They hook us up with a lot of phones for use in our One Paw Bandit game, which you can play at PhoneDog.com. Now let's take a look at these. Motorola DROID RAZR MAXX, Motorola DROID 4. Which one's the best? We'll find out starting right now. So you've got two really powerful Android devices available on Verizon, and they're two of a bunch of devices that are really available. And you know, Verizon has done a great job when it comes to Android devices. I mean, they really have something for everybody. If you want Android 4.0, you've got the Galaxy Nexus. If you want, a true HD display, you've got the Galaxy Nexus, the Resound, and the recently announced and released LG Spectrum. If you want, a big battery, you've got the DROID RAZR MAXX. If you want a QWERTY keyboard, you've got the Motorola DROID 4. Now all they need is international roaming capabilities on some of their LTE devices, which this one's actually set to get, but doesn't have it just yet. So it's dogfight time between two Motorola devices on Verizon. The Motorola DROID RAZR MAXX, which is essentially the DROID RAZR, but with a big 3,300 milliamp hour battery that's estimated at 21.5 hours of talk time. Then you have the recently released Motorola DROID 4. Now this is the fourth iteration of what we call the original DROID line. You remember the DROID launched way back when was that? 2009, if I remember right. Late 2009, the original DROID launched. It really revolutionized Android, not just for Verizon, but it's really what kind of gave Android its kick in the marketplace, as opposed to some of these other devices that are out now. So this you can kind of attribute to, it's a successor to the original DROID, and you can kind of attribute this line to the success of Android as a whole, at least in the United States. So spec-wise, 1.2 gigahertz core, dual-core processor, TI OMAP processor on the DROID RAZR MAXX, a 4.3-inch Super AMOLED Advanced display with 540 by 960 pixels. It's got an 8-megapixel camera on the back with 1080p HD video recording, but it's got a big 3,300 milliamp hour battery in the back. So if you see this versus the original DROID RAZR, can't really call it the original because I guess the original is the flip phone, but the original smartphone version of the RAZR, the DROID RAZR, you can see the size is a little bit different here. This one's 8.9 millimeters thin, so this is still a really thin device, and if you've handled both of them in your hands, to me, and I think you may find it to be the same way, the DROID RAZR MAXX actually feels better in the hand because it's not as funky shaped, or funkily shaped, I should say, as the Motorola DROID RAZR, because it doesn't have that curve. It's not as abnormally thin. It's 8.9 millimeters thin. It's still a pretty thin device, and it kind of has the same layout as the DROID RAZR with the micro SD card slot and micro SIM card slot over here, and then you got your power button over here, and then your volume rocker over on the right side, and HDMI and micro USB charging port and 3.5 millimeter headphone jacks up top. So the style and the design is very similar. It still has Kevlar coating on the back, Gorilla Glass on the front, but still a bigger battery and easier to hold in the hand. So you can see it fits perfectly as opposed to the DROID RAZR MAXX, or the DROID RAZR, which had some issues with some people. Then you have the DROID 4 over here, available for $199.99, and this one's $299.99. In case you were wondering, DROID 4 has a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core processor as well, TI OMAP. I don't know what's wrong with me and my specs today. Apparently I just can't keep them straight. Too many phones coming out. 1.2 gigahertz dual-core processor here, 4-inch QHD display, although it has the same amount of pixels, 540 by 960 pixels over here. 8-megapixel camera on the back as well with a flash. Then you got kind of a similar setup here, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack up top, power button. You got your micro USB charging port here, HDMI port, and then over on the side you have your volume rocker. Then you have a 5-row physical QWERTY keyboard here with a dedicated row for numbers, a spacebar area, and more. And they're pretty tactile and nice keys, but we'll get into those in just a second. It has a front-facing camera as well, and both of these are packing Android 2.3 with Motorola's custom skin. Now, even though they have Motorola's custom skin, you can kind of see some differences between these two devices. Just comparing head-to-head here, you can see, for example, little things like the text messaging icons are a little bit different, and then some minor changes in the menu interface itself. But out of the box, you get the typical Verizon stuff with both of these devices, and we can go straight into the Verizon folder to take a look and see what comes pre-installed. So about 13 applications over here, and it looks like you have 9 over here in the DROID RAZR MAXX. You have device setup, IM, mobile hotspot, My Verizon Mobile, VCast Tones, Verizon Video, Visual Voicemail, and VZ Navigator along with NFL Mobile. You do get some games over here on the RAZR MAXX as well, and I won't spend too much time on this, but you can uninstall those using Motorola's nifty little uninstall tool where you can just press and hold and then uninstall directly from the menu. But same kind of setup here with the menu, how it scrolls in kind of a carousel type form here, and similar setup over here with your Verizon applications. You've got VCast stuff, device setup, emergency alerts, IM, mobile hotspot, MOG music, My Verizon Mobile, NFL Mobile, Slingbox, all the VCast stuff, visual voicemail, VZ Navigator as well over here, and the same 2 games come pre-installed on the Droid 4. Now, interestingly enough, you can't uninstall the Verizon stuff, and we talk about this in a lot of the videos, but I just want to make sure you're aware of it if you're coming into this for the first time. You can't uninstall the Verizon stuff. They don't allow you to do that. What you can uninstall are the games. Let's go back here and take a look at the same games that come pre-installed. You can do the same thing over here as well. So, kind of frustrating. If you don't want to use those Verizon applications, you are stuck with those on the device, unlike some of the carriers like AT&T and Sprint that do allow you to remove those out of the gate. So, a little bit different there. 1,785 milliamp hour battery in the Droid 4, and this is the first Droid in the original line to have a non-removable battery. So in addition to 4G LTE connectivity, that addition, and then of course this has that as well, you can't remove the battery on this bad boy. So it is a little bit rough in the battery life department. You know, if you're using this thing, moderate to heavy use, you're going to struggle to make it through a day. Although I will say it's a pretty quick charger, but we'll talk about that more in just a bit. Let's take a look at messaging on both of these devices, because there are some minor changes to the text messaging interface. And first of all, I want to show you this as well, just so you can see the difference in how the text messaging interface looks. First of all, you'll see a black color scheme over here as a result of this Super AMOLED Advanced display. And then over here, this QHD display, you'll see the typical gray scheme that we saw on the Motorola Droid Bionic. So we can go over here and send a text message, and again, gray color scheme over here. You've got the black, the darker color scheme over here to preserve battery power. And we can take a look. Motorola's multi-touch keyboard comes pre-installed on both of these. Interestingly enough, I find it easier, and this is just because perhaps of the color, I'm not sure what it is, but I find it easier to type on the Droid 4, on the home screen, both the touch screen and on the physical keyboard, obviously, the Droid 4 as opposed to the RAZR MAXX. I don't know if they changed the haptic feedback, if it's the color, or what it is. But we can say the Quick Brown Fox is ready for spring weather. Quick Brown Fox is ready for spring weather. And then, of course, you can translate or transition over into landscape mode pretty easily, and the transition effects are nice and smooth. So you've got a 4.3-inch display here with your capacitive buttons down at the bottom, your menu, home, back, and search buttons. And for anybody with large thumbs or somebody that's moving over for a first time, maybe from a BlackBerry or something like maybe the Droid 3 with a physical QWERTY keyboard, you should be fine getting used to this. It is a large enough display that it shouldn't take too much work to get accustomed to. Then you have the Droid 4 over here, and it's pretty quick and easy to type on. And again, I sense more of a heavier haptic feedback over on this keyboard out of the box. And I should mention, with both of these devices, you get Swipe pre-installed along with this ice cream sandwich keyboard free. I installed that myself from the Android market, but out of the box, ignore that. You get multi-touch keyboard and Swipe. And same situation over here. Press and hold. You get keyboard and Swipe. So if Swipe's your thing, you can take advantage of that on this device, since neither one of these are running ice cream sandwich just yet. Quick Brown Fox is ready for the weekend. So it seems to be pretty quick and easy to type on. Haptic feedback's a little bit stronger, but you have that 5-row QWERTY keyboard down here as well. Now, comparing these to the other 3 Droid devices, I find the Droid 3, personally, I find the Droid 3 keyboard to be just a little bit more responsive. I like the way the keys felt on it just a little bit more. They were a little bit more tactile, but you still get a great 5-row QWERTY keyboard here. And despite the fact that it has a physical keyboard, they managed to keep this device relatively thin. And of course, on the design front, you'll see that it falls in line with the existing Droid RAZR and Droid RAZR MAXX line. So kind of a standardization of design, if you will, and then we can come in here and say the quick, let's do the quick brown. Brown fox is hungry and thirsty. Thirsty. Quick brown fox is hungry and thirsty. Now, the keys seem to be a little bit shifted to me. It's set up mostly like a physical QWERTY keyboard that you'd find on a computer or, you know, a keyboard obviously, but I find these keys to be just a little bit shifted to where it can be hard to type on. Maybe it's because of a larger enter button or the D-pad that's down here as well. But you've got all these nice navigation buttons. What is wrong? Woo, too much caffeine. Navigation buttons on both of these devices. Enter, okay, and then of course your D-pad, so you can access, you know, whether you're playing a game or you're listening to music or you're scrolling between that, you've got easy access to quickly change up and down or around and hit okay. So let's jump out of that and take a look at the browser. Now this is the first device in the original Droid line to have 4G LTE connectivity. So you've got two phones here that are packing a technology that's historically pretty heavy on the battery drain. So, you know, of course, this has a 3,300 milliamp hour battery, so it should perform just fine. This one's got a little bit of a smaller 1,785 milliamp hour battery, which I should point out, micro SD card slot and your micro SIM card slot are both behind this this cover here. This does remove, there's a tool that comes in the box that I don't have handy on the desk right now, or else I'd remove it for you. It doesn't come off very easily by the hand, but you can remove this and access those, although the battery is still non-removable. Let's load up phonedog.com. Take a look at that. Browser, phonedog.com, phonedog.com, and let's load it up over here as well. Whew, PhoneDog, need to work on my physical typing skills while I'm on camera. PhoneDog.com, and you can see pages loading up right over here, but pinch to zoom on both of these devices has been very responsive. The 1.2 gigahertz dual-core TI OMAP processor performs relatively well in this department, and then pinch to zoom is great. Portrait to landscape transitions are nice as well, with little to no lag. So if you're looking for a decent browsing device, you really want to take advantage of those 4G LTE speeds, you should be more than happy with either one of these devices. Pinch to zoom, very responsive over here. Same thing over here, although you got a little bit of a smaller screen, 4 inches as opposed to 4.3 inches, and this is one of those areas where I really notice it. In the browser, you know, when you're listening to a music video or you're taking a look at some videos on YouTube, I think you see the display difference. I think 4 is a great sweet spot for a lot of people, but if you're doing a lot of content on the display and you really need to, you know, have a bigger display, whether it's looking at pictures from your camera in your gallery or, you know, you're watching YouTube video, I think you'd be a little bit happier with a bigger display over here on the Droid RAZR MAXX. But still, pinch to zoom, very responsive, and you've got the same browser setup here. When you go into Windows, you can easily add more windows, although you don't get a physical preview like you do on some of the other manufacturer-based user interfaces.